Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 47, and I think a lot of you have been here for most of those, so thanks for being so loyal. Today, we're going to keep with our regular format. This is an all skill levels welcome gathering, and we get to share techniques, challenges, experiences, so glad you're here. We record all these, and so they're on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantanap. So subscribe, and you'll also find other good content out there. By way of introduction, I'm Dale Warner. I'm head of support for Plantanap. We have a pretty regular but flexible agenda where we say hello and then do first call, anything that's hot burning issues that you want to talk about. We'll take a look at the things that are on our community, our joint Campfire website. We might sometimes talk about feature requests, any topics that were submitted in advance, which are none today. And we do open mic. After a while, we'll stop the recording and do our afterglow segment, just an opportunity to continue the chat with the community, but offline. So jump in. Very few guidelines. I don't see anybody new here today. So you all know to hit mute if you've got noise going on in the background. You can submit questions and topics in advance. So do that. You can use the QR code, or there's a link in most of the emails we send you about this event. And with that, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And I'm sorry, that was awful US centric of me to say good morning. I know not all of you are on my time zone.
Good morning, everyone.
All right, so we'll jump right in. First call, what's on your mind? I feel like a radio talk show host when I say that.
And who's our first caller?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Producer. I skipped
I've potentially got something, Dale, if no one else has anything. I sent an email to you, but I can bring it up here. It might just warrant a short explanation or a point to a link. You want me to jump in?
Please do. I didn't notice that you'd sent me anything, so yep.
That's all right. I'm not a very important person. Here, my question is about connectors, and I've seen connectors in the system, and connectors come up, and I know there's a Git connector, but I feel like my brain hasn't wrapped around the purpose of connectors. I mean, it seems like a connector comes into play when we're connecting to an external system. And so I wasn't sure if there was a Campfire or another presentation that kind of goes through connectors, or what the 10,000 foot level of connectors are. And then on top of that, I'm connecting to other systems, and I'm wondering if I need to be writing a custom connector to do that type of thing, or if that's possible.
Well, first of all, let's back up, and I think that's a great question. Let's take a look at that segment of Plantanap. So I'm going to find my handy dandy test system here and take a look at the configuration. So I think you're talking about general settings, connectors. There's connectors, a whole connectors section. And so
yeah, right there. I mean, there's a lot of different things in there.
Mm-hmm. And so so apparently we build on, as we know that there's connectors. This is a place to put the credentials relative to your to things that get added. But it's a great question as to whether or not these we intend for you to add connectors there. Have you used it yet, David? Have you tried to do that?
I haven't used it. And is that purely what it is a place to store credentials? Or is it something on top of that? I mean, is there, like, I thought there was a what is it, like swipe payment one in there. So maybe it's just a credential storage. Maybe I haven't dug into it enough and it's not as complex as I'm thinking it is.
So Patrick, have you been in on any discussions about this?
Yeah, so you know, in some you know how in some actions like the for instance the IMAP actions where you have the option of putting in, you know, storing the credentials in the system. That's really what this is. It is a place really actually to store your credentials and so that you can use those in different actions throughout the site.
Okay, so I think it's less elaborate than I'm thinking it is, but I think it's exactly what I want. I've built some custom actions that connect to a project management system called Asana, and the issue I've been running into is where to store the credentials for that, because the way I have it set up, the credential can't just be in a token. And so my guess is I need to create a credential in here and use that in my custom action for connecting to Asana, which would solve all my problems, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So I'm going to mention that lots of our crew is off for Easter this weekend, and Bogdan among them. He could probably provide a great answer to this. So if we don't have a more definitive answer today, we'll bring it back up again next week. And I'm sure he'll have some insight on it. I don't know. Patrick, you're coming and going.
I was going to say probably the easiest example. Oh, maybe I'm having some internet issues. Apologize. I'd say the easiest example to look at it is in a send email action, where you put in the credentials, and
Okay.
that's where that's an example of where these credentials are accessed.
Okay, so this is really just a credential storage area of where to store various credential keys for different things that need to be used by actions. I've seen in the IMAP one that you can have credentials in there. I think since there was a GitHub one in here and there's a lot of GitHub integration with PlantinApp, that I was thinking this connector area was more elaborate than just kind of a password username store.
Right. If you create a GitHub credential, you know, this general version control, that it would be available here for selection. So you could, in theory, create one or more and then choose it here on the list. But yeah, I think it's predominantly for storage of credentials, and I don't know where they're stored. So
okay, and then I mean, this is maybe a second part of the question, because I know, I mean, I'm not using GitHub with PlantinApp. And so I think maybe that's why I thought this was a lot more elaborate of an infrastructure of the connectors. What's the GitHub integration? I know it's came up as a side topic on various things, but if you tie PlantinApp to GitHub, I realize GitHub source control, but what is PlantinApp automatically doing for you for source control? Is it automatically storing workflows and things like that into source control? What do I get?
Yep. So that's a great question, and this is a story that we're working on right now to improving. The intention behind this is that all of the content that you know, non-data, all of the programming content would be transferred into the Git repository, and so that would be workflows, entities, automation. And any changes that you might make to or additions of listings and grids and tabs, and all of the content is the intention is to push those into Git. In our when you initially establish a Git connector, your entire project is initially copied over into there, and so you'll see it then immediately. there are cases that come up that that make that non-functional. So this is not a 100% solution at this point, although it does, as far as I know, copy all of your content when you initialize it. So and it can be reinitialized. You can turn it off, turn it back on again, and it'll send all the content over again. So it does provide some versioning of your application. So the story that then we're now working on in 1.21, this next iteration of the product, is to start fleshing this out and to make it where as you create entities, as you create different content, that it automatically uses I don't want to get into automatically. It uses the Git repo to allow you to move information from one environment to another. So you can have a development environment, a user acceptance testing environment, and a production environment, and to be able to move the content between them. So there's what it is today, and there's where it's going, and you're going to hear a lot more about where it's going as we move in these next 6 to 8 weeks.
That sounds exciting. Now, is it as it is now? Like if I have a workflow and I edit the workflow and add a new action to it, when I click save, is that committing that to GitHub?
It is. And
allowing me, like when, let's say I have an oopsie moment and I need to roll back, is there something built into Plantain app that lets me roll back to the previous commit? Or is that something that's on the roadmap?
It's rollback is not currently supported, but assuming it gets committed to the repo, you can go in and find it and replace it back in. And I believe I did a video on that, on just that, being able to manually pull it out of the repo. And
yeah, I think you slightly touched on something, and then I'm assuming you just essentially use the import or the import functionality and
right,
import it back in that way if you need to recover something.
Yes. Essentially, you pull the content out of the repo and put it into a format suitable for
I've got those video links ready if you.
Oh, please.
In case you were looking for them.
If you can drop it onto the list, that would be great. So.
And that's the. Oh. Now you're hearing Dale's voice. There we go.
Autoplay, I love it.
Well, I think that covers the basics of my questions that I was trying for.
Yeah, I was just curious. Oh no, now we're seeing an ad.
So the first one I sent is actually the video about setting it up, and then the second one is Dale's video. The second link I sent.
I was just curious what this was. This a local?
Hi, my name is Bogdan, and
this is.
Yes, setting up application versioning through GitHub. It's just a video about him showing.
These are both the same. The two links you posted, they're both the same. So
oh, look at that. Thanks.
Well, I just wanted to bring it up at least to show what it looked like here.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I thought I got the correct one there. Sorry about that.
Well, when you find it, if you'll drop it.
Yep.
So you've enough to get you started, David?
Yeah, I think that's enough to get me started and get the ideas in my head rolling of what I can do with it.
I think certainly the Git is, if you're familiar with using Git, it's worth establishing and seeing what you get there. It's not rocket science what you're going to find in the Git. You'll be able to find your way through it. So.
Sounds good.
But there is no rollback capability yet. Exciting stuff coming in the next release or two. This is a complex topic, and it's going to take us several releases to get it 100% rolled out. But we're starting with the things that the core things that make sense. So okay, now we have a link. Let's try this one. An application that's under. So what was this? This was a feature focus. So you should there's a nice 3 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes worth of how to do this. Pretty straightforward. All right. So great first call question. Matthew, I see you posted something.
Yes. So, hi, everybody. Good morning. So my question is that the form that link goes to is actually one of the support forms you are working on my behalf. But now with the advent, if you look at the buttons, you know, your Dale, Test, Warner, if you, now with the advent of Bootstrap 5, if you simply take that form and then switch it to Bootstrap 5, if you wouldn't mind, just take a look and see what happens. That's a big behavior change in the buttons. I don't know if there's, I just getting my head around it, so I haven't really played with it at all. If there's a way, a setting to essentially keep the
Keep buttons instead of radios.
Yeah, have the button itself be the wrapped around the data element.
And let's see, this was created by execute actions, add multiple choice with radio buttons is the action.
Right.
And so this this functionality.
See, it seems to ignore, at least from what I found thus far, the CSS classes and so on in HTML5. And I'm not sure, you know, I haven't really dug into it at all, but I'm just curious as if you have any insight on that.
So
Right.
I'm sorry, I missed the Dale, what it looked like before you made the switch. But yeah, I think they were buttons before, right? And it changed to
Yes.
radio boxes. Yeah. So yeah, that unfortunately it's the what's happening there is that the radio buttons currently aren't supported in the BS5, and I think there was a breaking change listed for that. But that's actually the case right now.
Okay. Is that coming back, or should I start to design around that? Do we know?
I think we have a something in our dev backlog for it.
Okay.
Let me just check to make sure, and if not, we'll make sure it's there.
Yeah, Matthew, just chiming in. I found the same situation. I got the same answer a little bit ago.
Okay. Well, for me, for the short term, it's with the forms that require this, stay with Bootstrap 3. That's kind of what it boils down to. Excuse me.
3003. Patrick.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
Oh no, that's not it.
Yeah, but it's for BS3. I think is they were saying that. Oh no, I see.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind taking a note, and we'll make sure that it's in our list of things to address.
Yep, absolutely.
But yeah, known issue. So you might have to hold back at Bootstrap 3 if you really need that functionality right now, and alternately you can use the new. It as far as I know, it works as intended. It's just a different.
Yeah, it seems to work fine. It just looks a heck of a lot different. That's all.
Yep.
And the any CSS you seem to play with in there doesn't seem to have any effect, at least that I've seen thus far. I wasn't sure if it was me or not.
Probably not.
Can I just ask a separate question, actually tied back to the previous discussion?
Yep.
See that other tab, Dale, where you've got the credentials, the default SMTP that you see on the screen there in the connectors, that replaces the native DNN in this case?
I don't know. I don't know how this is used. I see it here. I don't have any experience with it.
Okay. Well, it would appear to. One of the, I mean, if you've ever tried to connect DNN to, say, Microsoft Office 365 type server, it's fun. So maybe this will help.
Yeah, I think it's and let's see if we add a new have other SMTP. I mean, you can add other ones, but I don't know where these are. Be interesting to know if they're actions. If the connectors are specified in actions.
Yeah.
So, for example, I have my basic test here that we can take a look at. So if we add an action here to an email. Yeah, so we have our connectors default SMTP. So
Yeah.
my guess is if I add a new one and call it Campfire SMTP, that if we were to refresh this and do it again,
That's yeah.
ever done that before?
Only every day.
So now we have a choice. So yeah, this would be a great place to be able to have multiple SMTP, and you just connect it out of the group. We still apparently support, we have the managed credentials. So it's storing in our standard previously established credentials. So wherever these are stored, David, when Patrick mentioned that that you could store them directly in the item. It's these connectors are evidently going in our same credential store wherever that is. So,
yeah.
So yeah, that's an easy one. A little experiment.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Cool. Anybody else with something that? I mean, I have a couple of topics that we can get into, but I'm not in a rush.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I had a question about, I posted something in the community and I didn't see an answer, which was using the console against a different defined database. I just want to make sure that there isn't an answer. But
I'm, as far as I know, this is talking about using the SQL console, doesn't have an option to be able to.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, to go against a connection string. Okay.
Yep. Sounds like it. If that's of use to you, that would be a great thing to put in as a feature request. Doesn't sound hard to do, but I don't know.
It sounds like it is to me too.
So I know that DNN has a SQL console. Just wondering. Yeah, same thing. They don't have a. They don't have one either. So yeah, nice to add. This is just a page. You can act. This is a page that can be accessed on the system, right? Let's see, we got
Yes.
SQL Console. We'll look at the modules.
However, the best approach is to duplicate it and to make changes, because it'll be replaced on upgrade.
Right. I was just wondering if I can get into it. What's the short way to get into this? This is not it.
Oh yeah,
on the
just
page
go to,
itself, you have to click on edit, the three dots.
yeah, or yeah, go to the three dots next to SQL Console.
No, to the left. Yeah,
Yeah.
right there, and hit
Then
edit.
click, yeah.
Okay. And so if we were to look at, I was just curious how this is implemented. There's a button that runs the query, and it does a So it does a SQL command, which is at SQL. So you could design that, you could create, it doesn't look like it would be very hard to do at all, does it?
Yeah.
Right.
To add another
You
connection.
just add a connection string option. Yep.
All right, Patrick, while you're doing stuff, can we make can you put up a card for this? Linda took the day off, so I can't throw it at her, but yeah, make a note. This looks like a very doable feature that we can take care of. But you could too.
I'll put the feature request in.
Lovely, thank you. That'll be perfect. Anyone else? I'm going to move on, but there's no reasons. Okay, so Campfire website. We did have a couple of contributions since last time. Let's make sure this is still logged in. And one of them was by Anthony, and this is about NavXP management. And so he was running into an issue where he had two NavXPs on one page and only being able to edit one of them. I wasn't familiar with the issue, but this does point up a pretty straightforward way to be able to do your own thing with editing. I think Ben has done and demonstrated some of this type of content before, but I'm going to close out stuff so we don't see, don't get confused with that. So we have like this, it lists out, there's a page builder default menu where you can go in and click edit settings, and it brings it up using the URL for, so it just uses the management URL to get into that. And in the same way, you know, this is the BS5 version. So if we were to take a look, for example, at the way this was built, the grid itself, the listing has a data source that is a SQL query. And so we're selecting from this internal table, getting the name, the module, and the template from NavXP instances. And from a button standpoint, he's got an edit button that is redirecting, and I'm sure he just pulled this URL from the from what you can see experientially. If you activate one of these, you can see the URL, and so then just copying that and putting in the swapping in the domain, the module ID, tab ID, and so anyway, very pretty straightforward way to do it, but it's a neat idea and it overcomes a problem. So very cool. And then I dropped one in, and this was one that demonstrated in the Low Code Cafe this Wednesday, and touched on it very, very quickly. Didn't spend any time at all on SQL, but I think it's, you know, this isn't really, well, it does. It's low code, right? It's just, here's a function that the result that you get out of it is that things are listed in a word format, like 1 month ago, 22 days ago, something that's relative and easier to do than to actually, I mean, for my mind, if I look at this, you have to do a little date math to see, okay, this is a couple of months ago, you know, you have to know what today's date is and just mentally do that. So converting it to something that's word-based is useful to me. So I demonstrated that in the Low Code Cafe, and this is the function. It's just a SQL function, and it's not particularly difficult. It's just doing this after some initial setup. It's just doing some, you know, less than 2 seconds ago, then the answer is just now. If the seconds is under 60, then it's how many seconds ago. We get 1 minute ago or minutes ago. It's just working through, and you could adapt this to do For example, if you don't want to do seconds, you could remove a couple of case statements and it would just talk in terms of minutes. Very adaptable. Anybody else enjoy that, or is this just me?
Yeah, Dale, this is Mark. I like that very much. I think that's pretty cool.
And like anything else, just taking the 10 minutes to put it out onto our shared website so that when it comes up again and you want to do relative time, it's there and easy to grab, and we don't have anything that saves you 30 minutes down the line. It's worth it to put it out there. If there's anybody on the call that's not currently part of the Campfire website, feel free to shoot me your email and I will be happy to add you. So that is the contributions.
Dale, can I ask you a question about this particular contribution?
Sure.
So this essentially gets updated when the page is refreshed. Is that correct? So your calculations for how long ago are when you run the script, which is when you load the page.
So no, I'm sorry, I did skip a little bit. Let me talk about the setup. So if you would install the script into SQL Server. So this is a function that you could use within. Okay, so you would load this. Just take this and you can drop it into either SQL Server Management Studio or the SQL Console and run it. It's not going to give any result, but what you get then is display elapsed time is now a function in the system. And so to consume it, if we look at the listing that I was showing you just a second ago and look at the SQL select, it's calling the display elapsed time function that we just created, passing in the last modified date from the data. So we get a last change field out of SQL. So SQL is doing it as you're refreshing the data source.
Okay.
So the example that I did on Wednesday, we were doing when was the last time that we got a health check update from a system. And we could see it was 22 seconds ago, it was 4 minutes ago. At 5 minutes, it was refreshing, so the counter would start over. But just visually, you'd be able to see, yeah, we heard from that system or we tested that system within the last 5 minutes.
And of course, if you wanted that to just update without the page being reloaded, you could do an interval refresh on the grid.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I'll just point out this particular script is using, it's just hard, it's tied to get UTC date. So if the date that you're working with, in this case, you pass in a parameter, the date, and all the comparisons are against UTC. So so long as the date is a UTC date, it's going to be the calculations are going to be right. If you've got a date in any other format, for example, a local date and time local to the server, you might want to adapt this script to either let you pass in 2 dates so that you can make it flexible versus get date versus get UTC date, or just flip all these to get date so that the comparison would be against a server date. So it's pretty adaptable, but this one is tied to get UTC date.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope someone else can use that someday. Doing a comment system, for example, makes sense to say that somebody made a comment 2 minutes ago, not just throw out a date, that kind of thing. I think it has a good use case. So we had a new feature, a new topic suggestion today from Patrick to do ghost stories. And because we're, in the US, it's customary you gather around the campfire and you tell scary stories. So Patrick wanted to tell a scary story. Actually, I'm putting him on the spot. He had no idea I was going to actually take his joke as a serious item.
I think Dale's going to sing "Home on the Range."
Yes, that is a scary. That's a different.
That's your scary story.
But I actually did have a ghost story, which was just kind of a fun one. funny ghost story, right? I had a client this week that had a broken export that the setup was that he had a listing and it had a conditional, and then inside the conditional he put a token, and the token was evaluating such that it completely blew up. It was not returning a good true false value, and so it was just unexpected data in the condition of a button group. And the plant and app code didn't handle it well. It was a complete page exception, and so every module on the page no longer rendered. So you couldn't get to any module, and so that's the scary story right there. It just blew everything up. And then to make it worse, because it was blowing up, my suggestion was, well, do an export on the module. You know what mistake you made. Do an export on it, manually fix it, and then bring it, import it back. But the export was broken, so you couldn't export it, you couldn't import it. It was kind of just crazy. So my solution, kind of the roundabout way, we added these features in as actions to be able to export module content, import module content, and let's see, I don't think I'll bring this over here again. Just show off these actions. But I use these actions. I just built a simple form, and let's again add a couple of actions here. So the export module content, you just provided a module ID and a token where you want it to go. So knowing the module ID that was broken, I sent it out to a form field. So module 823, and put it into a large text field that then I could copy and paste and edit and find the offending line. And then the reverse one, import module content, same thing. It just asks for where's the data coming from and what module, and it just takes all that content and does a DNN module import against it. So it's just replacing all of the existing content. Anyway, it was a roundabout way to fix things. I suspect there are other ways. Directly in the database, for example, could have found it and fixed it, but this was a solution. So that was my ghost story. Things were bad and then they got better. Not very exciting, but sometimes you just have to think outside the box a little bit, and this was my way out. Ben, you use these actions, right, to or anticipated using these actions to be able to copy content from one site to another. That was their original intent.
Yes, that was the original intent. When I had actually asked for these, I haven't had a chance to actually implement them yet, but it's coming. It's going to be my way of trying to have one type of source code where other sites then update themselves, or the push goes out to those sites so that everything stays in sync. So you don't have to actually manually make the change on multiple sites.
Well, that's why we added them, but it came in useful for something else. I've seen a couple of cases, just sticking with this ghost story here recently, I've seen a couple of cases where when things go very bad on a page, that all the modules on the page are blown up. So and it's not just this. Some people implementing the data table version of a listing, it was possible to get some bad data into our underlying tables, null values where we weren't expecting nulls for some reason. And we've plugged that particular hole, but when it surfaced, it was broke everything on the page. So sometimes you have to get creative to figure out how to go over these things. So that brings us into version 120 and known issues. And I don't know if I mentioned this last week. Did I mention about no CSS? There's a folder that we see some. There was a folder in the file system, no CSS, that was a theme that could be used for forms, and it's not compatible with the Bootstrap 5. I don't know why it's looking there, but the symptom for this particular one is that you try to go in and edit a form, and it will not allow you to retrieve the form. That you can't get in the administrative screen. So there's a known easy fix that we just get rid of this folder that is no longer required, and so it does require accessing into the file system. So just that's a known issue. And then we've had some reports, and I see Peter is not on the call today, but Peter has reported some issues with dates and currency in other got other language packs loaded, and so we're looking into those. But just know if you're using another language like Dutch, that there could be issues with dates and currency. And I've already spoken with our QA team about doing better quality assurance on those particular things for our international clients. So that's known. I worked with, let's see, Matthew. We worked to move a to move your configuration to the recommended page for where Plimpton app is on a page called configuration and on the root of the site. I worked with that with Matthew on that, and we got through it, but it was a little harder than we had anticipated. So this technique about getting Plimpton app to regenerate the configuration environment pages, I'm working on a better procedure for that, so that for those of you who want to move to our recommended configuration, that it isn't a very painful episode. But that was my yesterday morning and Matthew's yesterday morning. We spent a lot of time on that, getting that to happen. So we talked about this some last week, what the procedure is. So if you're curious about that, you can check out last week's episode. But Plimpton app will regenerate when things need to be regenerated. But there's some caveats when you're starting to talk about moving the configuration page as a whole. So I wouldn't rush into that until I have a good procedure for you.
Dale, I have one little update on that one for you.
Yes, please.
So on one of my installations, which dated back to DNN Sharp and stuff like that, on a hosted installation, those pages were off under the DNN admin menu. There was a separate install done by some version at one time, and so they weren't directly visible in the configuration. Like specifically, I think it was the page management or the users grid or something. One of those. So I had to go. I just removed the second. I found and removed the second instance of Plimpton app being installed. So something over in history created a second installation.
Yes. The yeah, so that kind of goes to the full recommendation. The app builder module should occur once on the site, and we recommend that it be under the configuration page, which is at the root of the site. We store some setup things in this Plimpton app configuration environment table, and we expect there to be one record there that has these various pointers to things or setup type items. So it's if you have multiple instances, whether you just put app builder on multiple pages, or perhaps you had put it on a page at one point and then it got automatically added. I don't know how it happened on your system, but yeah, we don't support that, and so there should just be one instance. And thanks for.
Yeah,
So Dale, do the page permissions need to be set in any particular way for that configuration page?
Not to my knowledge. It needs to be, you would want to set it. I mean, typically it would be to admins or to people that, excuse me, it's going to have to be accessible to the people who will be doing changes on your site. So for example, we have the low code engineer role. You would want to be able, if you're using that, you'd want to have the page accessible to low code engineers. But generally it should be protected from your typical users and unauthenticated users.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay. Florin, I see you're here with us today, and we had this question last week about a big JavaScript, and I was wondering if you ended up solving anything or learning anything since we last talked. You may be muted. Your mic is not working. Unfortunately, there's no audio, Florin. You're unmuted, but I don't, maybe your mic isn't selected. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. Okay, Patrick, you sing.
Well, you were talking about ghost stories.
Oh, we heard something.
Well, Florin, and if you get it, I'd love to talk and hear if you.
Now you hear me?
Oh yeah, no.
Now we are. Yeah.
Yeah. I previously been on headphones and it remains on this. I solved the problem. It was a bad assignment. Something that came from a database, and it no. Okay, no, JavaScript cannot read this data. I solved it.
So there was an unexpected data that was blowing up the JavaScript.
Yep.
Yep. Oh.
The database is returning null, and this is not been processing well in the JavaScript.
Yeah. Well, so you know, that's kind of the tone of and the direction of where we talked last week, that JavaScript can blow up in unexpected ways. So we anyone's new to that discussion or watching this on the replay, check out last week. There were suggestions about how to debug the JavaScript when it's a big JavaScript and it's not behaving well. So anyway, glad that you found it. And it's
yeah. Thank you. It helped me. Also, I solved the other two cases. So thank you for this.
Absolutely, and that's part of what I like about this forum. So many times you get a problem and you get solutions while you wait. So that's great.
Yeah. I'm new in the business, and I have too much to catch up.
Yep. Well, and so I think so many of us are running, you know, in very whether if you don't have somebody that's working next to you doing the same kind of thing, you just need somebody to bounce off of and say, what, you know, here's what I'm trying to do. I was dealing with another client yesterday. It was just more about if you can explain to me your problem, oftentimes you can solve it yourself. You just need somebody to,
yeah,
to talk to you about.
Yeah, it's right.
this group does that for us a lot. Okay. We can, if you want, we can talk about anything else, or we can jump over to feature requests. Something might be that's the last one I have on my list. So let's take a look at community. Sort by votes here, and just there we are just by way of setup, we are picking out things next week, picking out things that we can accomplish in version 121, and we want to make sure that we include some of these.
Yeah, I have a feature request, Dale. It's
And is it in this list, or
no, it's not in the list. I
Something
started
to
to
talk about.
type it in there, and I stopped because it seems so trivial, and it seems so, maybe, I don't know, I'm the only one with the problem, maybe, but since Patrick or somebody was taking notes earlier, I'll just voice it out loud. You know, if you start an action to open a form in pop-up, or if you open it up in text, you know, it gives you the JavaScript code that you could use to open the same form. In those notes, what is missing is a little line that shows the syntax needed to open a form with URL parameters. You can open the form several different ways, but I always need to have parameters, and I always have to go try and hunt down the syntax needed to have those parameters in the code that's opening the form. So my feature request would be, hey, add a note to the notes for opening the form with parameters.
that sounds like something that we could probably get done.
Yeah, I'm sure it's editing a little bit of text and it's done.
Exactly. Did you capture that, Patrick?
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we when these things make it in, we try and find a mix of. I mean, there's value, and then there's just some things that are minus, you know, big value that we can add, and then there's just these things that are minor annoyances that are going to take us 15 minutes to fix, and we try and get a mix of those. The one that came up earlier about a connection string and how easy that would be for us to fix and add. And then I go back. Nothing is true. Okay, editing text is pretty trivial for us to do. Doesn't require a lot of quality assurance, but everything we do, it goes through code review, and quality assurance has to sign off on it and say that it's done. So you know, none of these are trivial, and because we don't want to break anything related, but we do want to get things done. So I guess that's just a peek into our process a little bit. Okay, either anything else that is or is not on the list, feature request. I'm going to scan through these while we're thinking about them, because I think we have delivered some of these.
And I'm sure Ben is saying, please update them.
Yes.
He's muted, but he's saying it, and he's thinking it. That's what.
Patrick, get out of my head.
We're definitely, with this one, definitely came up this week about being able to use a checkbox to disable an action. There's some.
Yeah, actually, some of these are actively being discussed. They're not, but definitely the action list bump buttons. That one, Mark, we are actively discussing that one.
Hey.
I really think, Dale, that we should. Another one by Mark. That's almost the third one from the top of your screen right now. I would think that should be really easy, and it's something we should try to push through, because I agree with that one. I mean, we all agree with that one a bit. Yeah, that would be.
Okay, I'm gonna make a commitment. I am gonna push this one to my developer, Christy, and we'll see if I can get that to happen by next week, just as a challenge.
Did you do something with the feature request? It's at the bottom of this list now. Improve the process to export and import actions. It seems like it's better now, where you hit export and the export form, the pop-up form, it seems like it opens in place now, where before it was somewhere on the page. Was some work done on that,
yeah.
or am I dreaming that?
It does feel better.
Yeah.
I have encountered it and was not aware that changes were made in that.
I have a tendency to notice things like that.
Yep. So Jim Everett has commented about being able to flag the feature requests, and so the answer is yes. The challenge is that it's a separate list, but that really shouldn't matter. We need to find a better way to link those up. And I think after this meeting, my Friday looks pretty quiet. All the development team is off, so I should have time to be able to make some improvements on this. Well, I'll get into that. Cool.
We talked about the notes in action settings. That's something we were talking about earlier this week as well.
Absolutely. And without going into details, I don't think I'm giving anything away, that we also are taking a look at the way that actions are displayed, and the fact that, I mean, the structure that we currently have is that when you open an action, it goes down forever as far as it needs to, as complex as the action is. And we're thinking about ways to improve that so that the main settings, or the things that you are most useful to configure, are more visible, and that basically to use more of a tabbing kind of an interface within that, so that you can get to the things you want without having to, I don't know. I have a callus on my mouse finger from going up and down. I don't know. I'd love to see things fit more on a screen.
There's definitely a lot of scrolling with PlantinApp.
Yep. So improving that experience and notes being part of that.
Along those lines, there's something that I have to scroll to a lot over and over. I don't see it represented here. I always need to get into a field and then go down to its binding actions. And that's several scrolls and clicks to get down to. And then I need to go on to the next field and do it again, and then the next field and do it again. And I don't know how to express that, but I wish that somehow I could tag all of the bind fields and just put them in a list so I could edit them. Or I know that's pretty far out there, or if there were a quick way to get to it, which does come back to a previous request. Could we tag a property to go back to quickly? Yeah, I don't know. Just thought I'd mention something like that. There's pieces that I need to recurringly get back to over and over and over, and there's a lot of scrolling to get there.
Well, and I think that's part of that is part of the discussion, absolutely, and things like being able to, if that were a tab, that was accessible from the top. So you open the action, you click on the binding tab instead of it being located at the bottom. It would at least be 2 clicks instead of a ton of scrolling. You didn't get real excited about that.
Yeah, good. I mean, that says you're working on it. So yeah, I was just remembering an earlier competitor to Action Form called Dynamic Forms had a feature where you could tag a bunch of fields, and then it would present all the properties of all the fields. Let me say that differently. You could tag all of the fields you wanted to influence at one time, and then it would show one list of properties that were common among them. And then you could change one of those field properties, and it would apply the change to all of the fields that you had tagged. So it was like a bulk property change feature across fields. That seems like it would be tough to put together, but valuable in certain circumstances. I know I used it with that program. Just put that bug in your ear, maybe something come out of that.
I mean, that it seems to me very worthy of a feature request. And I know that sounds like, complicated to write up, but I don't think if writing up a feature request doesn't need to be complicated. You can just say, it would, title it bulk property change option and say, it would be nice to be able to change the properties of more than one field at a time, something like that. And I think that would be, definitely be worthy, because I personally can really see the value. Like when you have to change, like to do your bind expression, and you have, that it's going to be the same bind expression for 5 fields. Then you got to go through each one. Yeah.
Yeah, when I think about Plant App, I think about a couple things. One is that, hey, it puts tools in my hand that I ordinarily would not have access to or understand how to ever do if I had to jump into code with Visual Studio to get done. So one, it makes it possible for me to do things I couldn't do. But secondly, I think there's an element of how easy it is to get there and do it. And so when I think about how Plant App could be more appealing to more people, I think there's some things in that category of making it easy to get there is valuable. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think we've probably been better on the first part of that, putting the tools into people's hands and less on what's the user experience. And also, if you think about where we came from, it's a series of tools that have come together, and so getting a nice interface that responds well among all of them instead of different things on different modules. So, but that's where our discussion is. So we will certainly bring it into the product team for discussion, but then also I do, if you would take the 5 minutes and write that up, we would appreciate it, because it.
Gladly.
All right, cool. With that, I'm going to call the official portion of our program over with today. Thank you for coming and participating as you do. I look forward to this each week, and I'm very glad that you're with us.